Okay, so we'll get started. First of all, thank you everyone for coming. It's great to see you. I think I know most of the people in here. Gordon, I don't believe we've met. It's nice to meet you, and we appreciate you being here. And all the split board members, and it's a nice homey vibe. So I appreciate y'all coming. Thank you especially to Martin and Caroline for being willing to help out here and kind of teach us all a little bit about tax credits. I'm sure that there will be a lot that I myself will learn as I'm only 5 months into the job and I'm still kind of learning the ropes over here. But I'll just start briefly by kind of giving a bit of context about tax credits. So tax credits, there is a tax credit in the state of Colorado when you do a conservation easement and you restrict certain activities on your land. And the tax credit, currently there's about, I think, a $45 million cap in the state, but the tax credit can yield up to as much as over 90% of the money, basically. So essentially, if you restrict certain activities on your land, and we have done this on Heartland and the majority of our other preserves, you end up getting a one-time payment back that ends up paying for a lot of the price of the land. So the functional result of taking out these conservation easements and getting the tax credit is that you end up being able to pay much less per acre for a given piece of land. So what this has done for not only Split, but for conservation in Colorado in general, is it's sort of revolutionized conservation. It's made land conservation much more affordable. And as a result, it is a very popular program. And currently those $45 million are pretty much maxed out every year. So I will, Nicole, would you like to add a little bit to that before we hand the floor over to Martin?
Sure. I think you framed it well, Henry. It has been a game changer for a lot of folks in Colorado, but especially for Southern Plains Land Trust. It really, between Great Outdoors Colorado grants and the conservation easement tax credit and carbon offsets, it's really allowed us to grow at an exponential pace. As I'm sure you all know, the heart of our work is to acquire land for prairie wildlife. And so we've been able to expand from 3,300 acres in maybe, 2011 to over 60,000 acres today, 60,000. And so that's really, I think, important for a group like ours, which is it has a pretty small staff. We haven't been able to invest a lot into fundraising, but we've been able to leverage our resources through this tool, especially. And we've worked with Martin, especially in the last couple land deals. He's been super helpful to us with his financial expertise. And then I haven't met you, Caroline, but Tax Credit Connection has been our partner because as a nonprofit, we can't sell our tax, or we can't use our tax credit, but we can sell them. And so we've been selling them through Tax Credit Connection. So anyway, I'll stop there. It's been a huge game changer for us to have the conservation easement tax credit. It is actually one of the reasons that Colorado is among the top 2 or 3 states in terms of private land conservation, because our tax credit in this state is so generous, and it's really recognition of just how important it is to protect land in order to protect biodiversity.
Far better said than I could, Nicole. Thank you so much for that that helpful illumination of the tax credit. And with that, I'd like to pass it to Martin. Martin Herz is a financial expert. I believe, Martin, are you still on the board of Colorado Open Lands, or you have been at least, right?
I'm on Colorado Open Lands Foundation board.
Gotcha. Martin is a financial genius, if I might say so myself. And he has been incredibly helpful to Split, both Nicole and as Nicole has passed the torch to me as the executive director, he's been really helpful with me. Kind of trying to understand how to finance some of these land deals. Now we can leverage the tax credit and some of these other income streams to make these land deals a reality. So I'm really, really happy that Martin was able to join us tonight. And I'd like to pass it off to Martin, and you can give a bit of an introduction, then start telling us, dropping some knowledge on us, Martin. Go for it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that introduction. Financial expert. I like that title. At the end of the day, though, this is, I just like good deals. And this is a good deal, and it's not complicated, actually. But this is the presentation I wish I had 7 years ago when I started poking around asking questions, because I was curious. And I'd only heard about tax credits from the land trust side, that these were important and these were being used by to help transactions being done, but I never heard anyone ever buying them. I didn't even know how. So I just started going down the rabbit hole and figuring it out. So this is my, let me pull up my screen. Hopefully this will work. And then it's a small group. So if you just have a question, just shout out. So here we go. All right, is that coming up okay for everyone? All right, great. Okay. So this is a hands-on, down in the weeds, tactical explanation of how this thing works. I figure that's the unvarnished just explanation if you want to go down this road. So I got to throw out my disclaimer. This is not tax advice or investment advice. Talk to your tax expert. I'm not a tax professional. Don't pretend to be. Just telling you what I learned. Do your own due diligence, and I always put at the end, I have no financial interest in any brokerage firm. I've never sold tax credits. Nothing. I'm not doing this for any benefit for myself. Okay. So yeah, you covered a little bit on my background here, but yeah, my background was I went to Chicago Business School. I'm a chartered financial analyst, worked in real estate. I like investments. I love finance. I always do my taxes. None of this knowledge is necessary for this. So let me just skip ahead. And then up here, my nonprofit involvement, president of Colorado Oaklands Foundation. I work also with a senior living facility. Now joined the Volunteers for Outdoor Colorado board. And most relevant here, I'm a longtime SPLT supporter, advisor, but also, Nicole, you missed my contributions moving rocks that I've and planting trees and willows. Very proud to have found that one cottonwood that grew and is looking really good on your new land. Okay, so tax credits. By now, everybody in America has had some exposure to tax credits, particularly coming out of COVID. Child tax credits just is the main one that pops up. And the simple concept on a tax credit is it's a coupon that basically said, here, you can replace this, you can use this coupon to pay your taxes. That's much better than a deduction, where a deduction basically says, well, you get to reduce the amount that you have to claim as income, but you still have to, you're still paying taxes on this. This is, at the end of the day, you figure out what your taxes are due, you give them you can use this coupon to offset some or all of your tax liability. Much more powerful. I love tax credits. I've used the PV to put solar panels in my house. I got ones for heat pumps. And sometimes they're structured like these photovoltaic, where it's a percentage of your costs. I also use the one for electric cars. Colorado is amazing. They give you, I think, 5,000, and then the federal government gives you 7,500. It's amazing. And then for my industry experience, I was exposed to other ones. There's a tax credit to encourage low-income housing being built. And this one always struck me as weird because the coupons, $1 coupon for low-income housing tax credit sells for $1.15, which to me, just like that, why would anybody pay? You know, if I'm giving someone $1, why would they give me $1.15 and change? But I guess what I was told is it's a great way for banks to show that they're investing in low-income communities. So it's that's why the price is like that. And then with my board involvement, I learned about the various tax credits related to conservation, and those always sold for under $1. So let me go into why that's important and why I think that's really cool. All right, I'm going to just do a hypothetical example here. Nice round numbers. let's say you've got 250,000 in taxable Colorado income. So you have two upper middle class workers in the household, and your Colorado, it has to be Colorado. Let me just get this out here. This only is good for Colorado income. Doesn't help you if you're a Nevada resident, Arizona, not good for you, but Colorado income. The tax rate in Colorado is 4.4%. So it's really easy to figure out what your tax amount is in the simple examples. 250,000 times 4.4 is 11,000. So that's what you're supposed to pay come April. Excuse me, let me move this quickly. But the way taxes work is you can't just write a check on April 15th. The government does not like that. They want you to pay estimated taxes 4 times a year. So that means you are paying out, you're giving money to the government 4 times a year, most times to pay your estimated taxes, with every paycheck if this is primarily coming from salary. And they don't pay you any interest on that. So it's just sitting there. So I just kind of made a rough estimate of how much money you would have gotten if you didn't have to make those estimated payments. If instead of the government withholding from your paycheck, your Colorado, a little portion for your Colorado taxes, or let's say you sell some stock and you have a capital gain, you're supposed to send in at September, December, a couple times a year, a check for the estimated taxes. If you don't, you get hit with penalties and interest. So just as a quick estimate, on the 11,000 right now, 5% interest is possible. And let's say it's on average about half of money is out over the course of the year. So, not a small, $275 of foregone interest. So really the total cost in Colorado taxes, if you had a $250,000 income, is $11,275. Are most people following me so far on this? Any questions? Okay. So again, this is how you would do it without the tax credit. Okay, so if you have a tax credit, we're going to take that same $11,000 tax liability, and then this is how it works. You get to buy tax credits at 94 cents on the dollar. So if you look at that, you get to pay your $11,000 tax bill for $10,000 for $10,340 in that cost there. So, and you can buy that certificate from Tax Credit Connection between January and April, hypothetically. So you don't have to pay your estimated taxes on that point there. So this is where I look at it and say, like, I like paying less in taxes. Who doesn't like saving some money? So here's my estimate of the total savings, assuming again this 250,000 of hypothetical income. You're saving 660 by buying it at 94 cents. You didn't lock up your money over the course of that year, so your savings are $935. So not bad. That's the way I look at it. And you can buy, you don't have to buy in just 1 year increments. You can buy, and this is something that Tax Credit Connection talk about, you can, how long these credits are good for before you need to use them. Is everyone with me so far?
I have a question, Martin. Who sets that 94 cents on the dollar? I'm just curious. Is that just standard for like individuals, or?
Well, this is what from Tax Credit Connection. I mean, there's a range of prices that people pay for it and this is something that Tax Credit can talk about the different pricing levels.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'll just hop in and say I'll be happy to talk about pricing. And I think that another thing to consider is that there's different market forces in play that kind of direct the pricing model. But we also have more flexibility with pricing because you're bringing your group of buyers to us directly. So Yeah, that would be my preliminary answer. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, you can go into much more detail and talk about it, but this is just looking at a simple perspective from a buyer's side. So right off the bat, this is different from making a donation where you get all the benefits, the warm fuzzies, you're helping the cause, but that just reduces your income a little bit. This actually saves you money when you do it this way.
Can you buy more tax credits than your tax liability and get paid a refund?
Caroline, do you want to field that one?
Sorry. In a Tabor surplus year, you can. So currently the limit is 50,000. So if you were to purchase 50,000 in tax credits at a discount, you could then submit that for up to 50,000 of a refund. We don't as often see buyers doing this, as you're not getting as deep of a discount. But for tax paying entities that receive large chunks of credits, so a landowner could do a refund if it's a Tabor surplus year. If it's not, then the state does not allow it.
And how do you find out if it's a Tabor surplus year?
Yeah, you talk to us. We typically are informed of that in the mid to summer to early fall of the year prior. So for instance, we know that 2023 is a Tabor surplus year. We're still waiting to hear guidance on 2024. It's looking likely. And for future years, we just don't know yet. The state has not set their budget.
So maybe Caroline, that was a great question. If you could just, I mean, that means you could buy a big, that's really useful. If you can get refunds on that. I was going off of my experience so far has been non-Tabor years, which is most years, where if you buy a tax, these are only as good as much as you owe taxes. And then you roll over whatever you have to the next year until you use it up. But if you could submit it and get a tax refund on it, that's again, in my example, you're buying a coupon for 94 cents and then turning around and using it to pay off something for $1.
Yeah.
I like that.
I agree. The other thing I'll add is that the process is lengthier because it goes through the Department of Revenue. So it's not as though you submit for your refund and then the funds are immediately in your account. We're seeing it take up to 10 months. So it's something you'd have to plan ahead on. The state is not amazing at giving direct guidance on how they can't give you a firm date of how long it's going to take, but that 9 to 10 month window is what we're seeing right now. So that would be something to keep in mind if that was an angle that anyone was interested in taking. You're not going to see that return immediately.
Any other questions? Okay. Well, let me jump. So I kind of covered what's the benefit to the person buying the tax credit. You save money. But this is where I think it really kicks in terms of the power of it. So let's say you buy, as an individual, buy like when I buy a $20,000 block of tax credits to help me pay my taxes. If I'm paying 3 cents higher than what it would have sold for before, let's say Split comes and sells some tax credits, they want to see as close to getting $1 for $1 because that is money for them. And if they don't get paid, unfortunately, it doesn't happen that you get paid $1 for $1 tax credits. They sell it at somewhere between, let's call it 88 cents and 94 cents. That's something Caroline can discuss more often from their perspective. But I'm looking at it from this perspective of, because I'm a big fan of Split, I'm going to pay top dollar for these. And if I drive the price up 3 cents for what I'm purchasing for, and I buy a block of 20,000, that's $600 more that goes to Split. And then if you extrapolate this forward, well, what if it's not just me doing this? What if it's everyone on the call that's doing this? And And theoretically, Split is able to sell all their tax credits for 3 cents higher. Well, if in a year where they're doing a new transaction, they could have up to 1.5 million of tax credits to sell. You sell those for 3 cents more each, that's $45,000 more to Split. And this is where it gets really interesting. Oh, even more interesting, I think, is if this translated over to the entire $45 million allocation got driven up in price by 3 cents, that's 1.35 million more that goes towards land conservation in Colorado. I mean, that's some big numbers. Does that make sense to everybody? So yeah, that's why I kind of look at it. It's kind of win for the individual, and also it's a win for the person you're buying from. And if there's enough people taking advantage of this, this starts helping the whole state of Colorado.
Hey, Martin.
Yeah.
I think that our deal with Tax Credit Connection has been that we sell them at 6 cents higher. Because if we don't bring buyers, we get 85% of the proceeds. If we bring buyers, we get 91%.
Oh,
So
so I was
think
just using 3. So
we
whatever.
double all of your numbers, which makes it even more impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. Now let me flip over. So this is kind of like percolated in the back of my mind for a while, just hearing about tax credits from my involvement with land trusts. So then I went online and just started Googling tax credits. How do I get them? So, but this is the best way I describe my the results of my early efforts to get tax credits. When I went onto the website and said, hey, I'd like to be contacted if you have any tax credits for sale. Now, maybe I did this more when there honestly weren't as many tax credits for sale in any given year. When there was maybe only 18 or 25, this is about 3-4 years ago. No one ever responded to me. So it was just a hypothetical thing for me. And so I kind of learned I mean, sorry to say this, but it's kind of you have to got included in the club. And I kind of get that from the tax credit broker's standpoint. I mean, every time they have to talk to someone new, there's an education cycle. So it's much easier working through existing relationships, existing tax accountants. But I knew someone on the inside. So I got to give credit to this is the start of how my journey of getting finally an allocation. Thank you, Nicole. I talked about why can't I get some of these? And so it's just a matter of getting to know Nicole, and Nicole put in one email, and I got a call back and my journey started the next day on this. This is where it gets a little more complicated when you have this. And when you start this journey, you have to, when you're talking with the tax, your source of tax credits, there's a couple things they will want to know right off the bat is how much you're interested in purchasing. That's something that Caroline can talk about in terms of their minimums, maximums, the price. And this is something also as well in terms of if you're as the price for split supporters, and also when you need it by, if you're trying to use it for 2023 or you're going to use it for 2024, that sort of thing. And then it's a matching process where these tax credits aren't sitting around very long. They're trying to be sold and put to use as quickly as possible. I mean, if you look at it from the perspective of split, you want to sell your tax credits quickly as possible so you can get that cash to complete your transaction. So there's a lot of variables in this that need to get worked out before you kind of matched up finally with what you're going to purchase. So for me, the way this worked out actually was getting called about when tax credits were coming available after I disclosed how much I wanted to purchase and all that. And then after, there's the verbal of, hey, this is what I'm interested in. I got 2 separate legal documents, pretty easy to read. One is an agreement was written out to be between myself and the other side of the transaction, which this case would be Southern Plains Land Trust. And then there's another agreement between myself and Tax Credit Connection. So you just DocuSign it, works really easily. You mail 2 separate checks, one to Southern Plains Land Trust, one to Tax Credit Connection for the brokerage services. I got to tell you, I thought this was going to be more like a house transaction where everybody you put your money in escrow and then it just gets dispersed when the transaction's done. But I can see why it's not, because escrow services are expensive. And this is just a more effective, a faster way to get things done. And at the end, once those funds come in and the tax credit's available, you get a tax credit certificate. That's your coupon. Any questions on that? And let me show you what my coupon looked like. So this is so I tried buying from Split a conservation easement tax credits. Turned out that wasn't available, but they did have historic structures tax credit certificates. So I had to learn a little bit more about that. The terms are very similar, although not identical. But this is what I picked up. So I helped Split by buying some of the tax credits they got. You can see on the form here, they got 108,000 of tax credits. I purchased 20,000. Anyway, this is the coupon that you use for your taxes.
Was that for the Penrose School, Nicole? I'm curious which historic. Okay, because Nicole got a grant to restore the Penrose School in Raven's Nest, so that makes sense. Gotcha.
Yeah. So, if I'd used a tax preparer, I would have just take the PDF, forward it on to that person. I'm done. They will file my taxes and get everything done with that. I use TurboTax software, so I was a little nervous at first, just to see how that would go. It just walked me through it. Really was not hard to fill in the blanks. And so this is just to tell you, this is my, I've gone through this process twice. The first time I tried to buy from Southern Plains Land Trust some conservation easement tax credits. Told they were all sold out. So I was like, great, fine, I gotta wait. Then they said, well, we have these other ones available. One was from an individual, but I ended up settling on buying conservation easement tax credits from Mountain Area Land Trust. Worked fine. So I used the forms for that. Then my second, after I used up those, I came back and tried again to buy Southern Plains Land Trust conservation easement tax credits. And then I got your historic tax credits, and okay, that worked too. I had to ask a couple more questions. And actually, this is my actual experience. The unvarnished experience. I submitted it with my taxes, didn't get my refund, didn't hear anything. So I started getting nervous because, well, I do my own taxes in case I screwed something up. And then I finally heard back from someone at the Colorado Department of Revenue saying, hey, there was something wrong on this. So I immediately fired off an email to the good folks at Tax Credit Connection saying, please, I need some help. Turned out they called some person in one department of Colorado, the state government, did not hand one piece of paper or something to someone at the Department of Revenue. It got resolved in like 24 hours and everything worked out. It was just a paperwork was sitting on someone's desk. So I appreciate that help getting that resolved. But it's a relatively simple process that if you want to pull up the tax credit forms and just do it completely by yourself, it's available online so you can see where you put the information on the blanks. But for me, do my taxes. It added maybe a half hour, not 15 minutes, not much time. Henry, you had a question?
Is there a limit that an individual, like like a dollar amount that like an individual can buy in terms of tax credits? Like you bought 20,000, could you buy like 1 million if you had like a lot of, that kind of capital, or like is there like an individual limit
Oh,
of what
yeah.
you can buy?
Gosh, I don't know if there's a max. I mean, the way I look at it is it makes sense to buy enough tax credits for what you're feasibly going to be used in the next couple of years. Because essentially once you buy that tax credit, that money is out and you don't get that money back for a couple. So you have to make that balance point of how many years you want to buy together, because who knows, you might decide you want to move to Boca or go to Arizona, and then all of a sudden you can't use your Colorado tax credits. Caroline, did I answer that appropriately?
Yeah, absolutely. So the credits carry forward or are good for 20 years from the date that they're created. But if you think about the time value of money and that the tax credit is just going to be sitting on a very beautiful piece of paper, but it's not actual currency, we typically recommend, up to 5 years, but that would even maybe be pushing it a little bit. But you certainly can do whatever you want. And what was the other? Oh, there's also no limit to the amount of tax credits an individual can purchase. But again, you just want to be savvy and think about what's going to benefit your situation in terms of, what your estimated taxes are, how quickly you can use them up, etc. So hopefully that helps.
Any questions?
Yes, is this just for Colorado tax?
Yes. This is just for Colorado. It's not a federal tax credit.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Martin? I thought it made a lot of sense, and I definitely learned some stuff in there, so I really appreciate that, Martin.
Yeah, no, glad to help. Hopefully, this is not complicated, and it's a way to help split outside of making a donation, and you get to save money. It's a win.
A win-win, exactly.
Yeah.
So you said one thing, Martin. You're talking about you could purchase these credits in the window between the end of the fiscal year or the end of the year and then before your taxes are due. So if it's not going to happen this year, but if I were to find out I had a certain liability at the end of 2023 as I'm doing my taxes in January of 2024, you can then buy the tax credits in 2024 and they're used for the 2023 tax period.
I'll let Carolyn cover that, but fundamentally, there has to be some availability at that time, because everybody would love, from our side, the purchaser side, that's perfect, is just getting it just as you need it and then putting it right to use. But from the folks on split side, they'd like to get, if they close their deal in July, they want to get their money in July. So anyway, I'll turn it over to Carolyn if that.
Yeah. Let's see, a few things I would say. So, in terms of the timing of all this, it's important to keep in mind that there's a finite amount of these credits, 45 million per year, and it's quite a popular program. So we usually sell out pretty quickly. So for folks, and this is, I don't know, I'm thinking about just the market forces that are at work, but I would encourage someone who is interested in supporting split and purchasing tax credits to kind of buy when it makes sense, but buy as early as possible, just so you make sure you get your piece of that limited pie of credits. And you can use let's say we have 2023 credit. That's good for the tax year 2023 and beyond. So that continues to be valid for 2024, 25, etc. Now on the flip side, and this I apologize that I think this is the case with Split, that they primarily have 2024 credits. So as we're looking to facilitate these transactions, it's important to keep in mind that you wouldn't be able to use them for 2023 taxes, but you could use them next year on your 2024 tax return.
I believe that's correct. Nicole, is that correct?
This is outside my expertise. I just sold the credits. I didn't use them. I don't have that much tech.
I'll check really quick. So let me buffer for like 1 minute.
And I guess one other thing I may add is I did this from an individual. This is my journey using individual tax credits. Companies also have Colorado tax obligations, and sometimes in really big numbers. So my understanding is if you are a small business owner and you had to pay taxes on that for your business taxes, you could use those as these credits as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see, situations where if someone, owns a business and sells it and has a high tax liability that year, that could be a good year to buy tax credits. So really, the name of the game is to work with your accountant, or if you're a financial wizard, financial genius, like I can't remember what Henry said, like Martin, perhaps you do it yourself, but get your taxes as low as you can. And then once you have that number, why pay all of that money to the state when you can, knock several points off by purchasing a tax credit at a discount?
So the question I have is, this is clearly like an advantage, right? You're going to get a discount on your taxes, even if it's 1 or 2%. And in this case, with some of these credits from Splitter, it could be as much as 10%. So why aren't corporations coming in and just buying them all, like, as soon as they're available this year? Like, why isn't Split just sold out of these credits? Because a corporation is going to get a 10% or maybe even a 5% discount, and that's a lot of money for them.
Yeah, it's a good question. I, like Henry, am fairly new to my appointment, so I don't necessarily have the wisdom of many, many years. But it's a couple of things that, just from my knowledge, one is that, as Martin mentioned, it's a pretty tight-knit community. So for instance, our brokerage has individuals that we've worked with for 20 years, and they kind of get first dibs at these. And it's also a set amount. So we haven't, like, the community of conservation and tax credits hasn't had the need to find additional corporate or large buyers. That may change. So there is legislation coming this spring that could increase the amount of tax credits quite a bit, which would be great for conservation. I mean, it would just be a boon to this whole program. But then on the flip side, depending on what the appetite of individual buyers are, there may be more corporate interest, only time will tell. But you are correct, Greg, that any entity that is paying Colorado state income tax would be a candidate to purchase tax credits. So, yeah.
And that's one thing that struck me, is how the price seems to kind of be stuck over the course of the years. You would think, because based on interest rates and the economic cycle, the price would go up and down like this. At least that's not been my experience. I could be wrong on that, just because you're always able to sell all these through tax accountants, through high net worth individuals. But it just seems like if the best opportunity for Split is to sell as many of these as possible at the high, it's no question that they will sell, but why not see if they could sell it for just a little bit higher, and also benefit their supporters by helping them save on taxes at the same time, is the way I look at it.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to give 100% donation to Split, you could theoretically pay 100 cents on the dollar. Sorry, I'm kind of losing my focus here. Yeah, but that's a great point. Yeah.
So
Cool.
it's sort of an indirect way to, like in addition to potentially giving a donation, it's a way for people to save a lot of money while also like donating money to Split in a sense.
Yeah. Oh, and okay. So that was what I was thinking. I mean, one other thing I'll note is that this is a unique program. There's, I think, one or two others, maybe two other states in the country that offer a conservation tax credit like this. Their programs are much smaller than Colorado's. So when we're thinking about, why aren't all of these credits selling, it's kind of a unique situation that a lot of folks just literally don't know about. So you guys are lucky in that you're in the know and you have a wonderful organization that is participating in this program, so you kind of have the opportunity to join in and support something that makes Colorado a really special state. And another thing that is unique about these tax credits is just this transfer process that we've created. So Martin did an excellent job of walking us through kind of what his individual experience was like. We tried to make it, as painless as possible for folks. And it's really, at this point, we just send you like a 6-page DocuSign that you just sign. And then, our firm takes care of the rest of the paperwork, etc. So not all tax credits are like that. And as someone who's been learning about different tax credit programs around the country, I will say that ours is uniquely accessible in that way. Yeah, that's what I would say.
I have a question. Is there, like, let's say that I, as the executive director of Split, want to buy some tax credits from Split. Is that a conflict of interest? And the same question goes for the board, because obviously we're like, affiliated with the organization.
Yeah, I don't see any problem with that. I think before I give you a firm yes, I'd want to talk to the tax experts in my firm, but to me, it sounds like it would make sense, and I don't see why the Division of Conservation would necessarily care or notice.
Now I'm thinking I want to buy some tax credit.
Well,
And you get a tax credit, and you get a tax credit, and we all can have tax credit.
And I guess Caroline, a follow-up. Oh, sorry, Greg, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, the only conflict would be if for some reason you were able to buy those tax credits at a bigger discount. Like if you were worked out an agreement where you're getting them at 75 cents on a dollar, so you could pocket a quarter of the tax credit, then you can see the conflict there. As long as you're not getting an unfair advantage, so you're paying the market value of it, then there shouldn't be any conflict whatsoever. And if you're paying more than a dollar, then clearly there's no conflict.
For sure. Yeah, I'd be curious to know that, Caroline. Maybe you could follow up on that just to confirm and then let people know so that we could, because I'm definitely like, if this is not a conflict of interest, I'm in. It sounds awesome. I guess the other question is, if people in this webinar or people who view this on our website, for example, are interested in buying tax credits from Split, would they go through Tax Credit Connection? And if so, what is the process? Is it just like contacting you and then asking for that, that document to sign, and then you guys would take care of it? Or how does it all work?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see, if you are interested in buying tax credits, really it's as simple as contacting me. And I don't know if Henry, it would make sense to send out an email or something, or just share my contact information. I would recommend, I'm always happy to have a preliminary conversation with anyone if you just have general questions or want to understand in a more one-on-one context of like how this program works, etc. We can talk at any point. But if you really want to get into the transaction part of the deal, I would recommend just either sitting down with your accountant or thinking personally about what your income tax liability is like at the state level. Because that's going to determine how much we match you up for, or, how many we sell. And it's really just as simple as having that number. We already know you want to buy from Split. We'll give you the pricing, etc. And then it's a DocuSign, and we take some of your, like, we need your address and your social security number and that kind of stuff. But it can be as simple as that. And like I said, I'd be happy to chat with anyone at any stage of thinking about this or wanting to pursue it.
So would you be okay if, we shared your email with Split
Oh
supporters,
yeah,
for example?
definitely. Yeah,
Awesome.
please do. That would be wonderful. Cool.
And Caroline, if I may add, one of the improvements I've seen since I started purchasing these things, and this was part of the last, I think, tax law, is now there's like a register. Once you purchase it, Tax Credit Connection puts your name on a registry with the Department of Revenue, so they can then go and see how many tax credits you buy, and kind of cross you off that list. It sounded like before that seems like just an intuitive thing to have done, but I guess version 1.0 of this didn't do that. So tracking was a little more complicated. Now it's easier for them to just say, okay, this is how many credits were bought, cross this, this is how many have been used this year, this is how many are left. Is that a fair statement?
Yes. So you'll receive what's known in the biz as a tax credit certificate. That just it states how many tax credits you've purchased. And the Department of Revenue also has it on their record. So it's like a balance in your bank account. You may use it all at once on one tax return. So it may go like that. But yeah, what's nice and what's been an improvement, I think, in recent years is that the tax credits are reissued in your name. So it's not like once Split sells them to you, they become your tax credits. They're under your name. They'll be yours forevermore. And the other component of that that should give people who are interested in this a lot of certainty is that there's no recapture risk. So recapture is when the government basically decides we don't like this tax credit program. These are not valid anymore for whatever reason. These are protected in perpetuity by the state of Colorado, and that can never change. So once you have them, they are yours, and there's no risk of them being taken away, essentially. And there are tax credits, especially at the federal level, where that's not the case.
Definitely.
So it's a really secure way to,
I'm glad you touched upon that, Caroline, because my experience was with low-income housing tax credits, which if, let's say you're buying tax credits for an affordable housing complex, and 10 years down the line after you've bought your credits and used them, the new owner is not following the rules, well, then you get a call and say, sorry, your tax credits are void. So I would never touch one of those. So I did my due diligence. The same thing, like, well, there's, if Split turns Heartland into a golf course, I'd be disappointed, but I'm not going to be hurt from a tax standpoint. So it's simple.
Well, and that's a good segue. I do have a fairly short presentation. I'll try to keep it short. That I think speaks to more of just the conservation tax credit process and all of the work that goes into receiving a tax credit like this, as well as information for buyers. So if it's all right with you all, we'll segue into that. And just like Martin, please interject with any questions you may have. I'm happy to chat through anything at all. And let's see if I can do this. Does that look like the whole screen? Okay, cool. So my name is Caroline. I work with a tax credit brokerage called Tax Credit Connection. Obviously, I've been chatting a little bit before this presentation, but just to give you a little background about our company, Our company president is named Ariel Steele. She did not found the company, but she purchased it 18 years ago and has been working with conservation tax credits ever since. So she has definitely been an influential force in making this program awesome. And we have nearly 2 decades of experience working with both buyers and sellers. So as the broker, we will work with folks that are considering donating a conservation easement and helping them get their tax credits. And then on the other side, we work with individuals, corporations, et cetera, who would like to purchase the tax credits. So we kind of play matchmaker. And yeah, let's talk about why we're here in general. So, as we've covered, Colorado has a really generous program. There are also federal tax benefits. If you're curious about them, hit me up offline and we can talk about it. But really the focus here is the Colorado state income tax program. It's important that all transactions meet certain qualifications, that the conservation easement is done properly, that all the paperwork is filed correctly, and that's part of what we work on. And for your knowledge at this time, you can get up to $5 million for your conservation easement donation. So like I said, it's quite a generous tool, and it's one that really makes these conservation projects possible in a lot of the state. In a case like Southern Plains Land Trust, where they're not paying taxes, they're a nonprofit. This great tool and program makes it so that they can sell it to another taxpayer for cash. So to take it way back, and this is kind of like the very 101, but I talk to folks that are kind of in all stages of their journey. So just so that we're clear on what a conservation easement is, it's a voluntary legal agreement between a landowner and a qualified organization. So that would be a land trust, for instance. It does permanently restrict the use of the land. So once that conservation is in place, that the terms of that easement must be followed forevermore, and they can never be taken away. They're designed to preserve land and protect water rights. And they also protect what the state defines as conservation values. And I know that SPLT is a very value-driven and mission-driven organization. So how great is it that this program aligns with their values? Martin did a great job of explaining what tax credits are. I'll just give you my quick down and dirty explanation. So again, they're used against your state taxes dollar for dollar. I call it's like a gift certificate. So imagine you had a gift certificate to a restaurant that you would never go to. You could sell it to someone else at a discount. They could enjoy a nice meal and you'd get cash. And they are more valuable than deductions. So, and again, Martin covered this really nicely. The tax credit is a dollar for dollar reduction in your tax bill. A deduction is a percentage off. So these are really powerful and good tools. So how do conservation easements work, especially as it pertains to creating these awesome tax credits? So the idea is that they run with the land. So even if the land one day was sold, it would still be encumbered by that conservation easement. It never goes away. The landowner does have certain rights, and those rights don't go away with the conservation easement. So for instance, they retain ownership of the property. So that's a common misconception, is that if you do a conservation easement, you don't own the land anymore. You do. You're just giving up certain rights, particularly development rights. The landowner also still manages the property, and they retain all rights not conveyed in the easement. So each easement is unique and is really tailored to the goals of the landowner or the entity that owns the land, as well as the land trust. And so there are some cases, perhaps a landowner would like to be able to have recreational activities on their land or a hiking trail, etc. They're able to negotiate kind of rights that fall within conservation values. public access is not generally required, although that can be a part of an easement, for instance, if it's giving trail access to a community. And the land can be sold, leased, or mortgaged, but that mortgage is subordinated to the conservation easement, so the conservation easement will stay in place. So the grantee, again, would be the land trust who's holding the easement, and they are required to monitor to make sure that the easement values are being upheld throughout time. And they also enforce the restrictions. So for instance, oftentimes the land trust will go and do a site visit to a piece of land once a year to make sure that they didn't build a Walmart in a corner. It sounds silly, but there are large examples or small of what could happen if you're in violation of that easement. So they are monitored, and it's made sure that the land is still protected. And the grantee holds the rights that are conveyed or granted in the easement. So that's their role. In order for a donation to qualify for tax benefits in Colorado, there are a few requirements. So it has to be a qualified conservation contribution. So it has to be contributed to an entity that works with land conservation. So for instance, you wouldn't be able to work with the Red Cross to do a conservation easement because that's not their mission. But you could work with the Southern Plains Land Trust because they are focused on conservation. And that's, that's up there. And it has to be exclusively for conservation purposes. So they are really scrutinizing to make sure that, it's truly with this conservation intent. And it's not going to become like a golf course or something. There are some purposes, recognized conservation purposes. So it could be for outdoor recreation or public education. So like, a nature center or a trailhead. It could be a protection of a relatively natural habitat. Now, it doesn't mean that the habitat has to be perfect. And, of course, many landowners with conservation easements are engaged in restoration efforts on their land. So that relatively natural habitat is, sort of up for interpretation and something that's addressed in the process of donating that conservation easement. Or it could be preservation of open space, where the preservation is for scenic enjoyment with public benefit, or pursuant to a clearly delineated governmental conservation policy with public benefits. You could think of like the Boulder County Open Space Program. I live up here in Boulder, and we certainly have strong open space values. Something that's newer to the program is that it could preserve a historically important land area or certified historic structure. So something that's been really interesting to me. We also work with historic preservation projects because they earn tax credits. In many instances, having a landmark designation as a historic building doesn't mean that that building can't be torn down, which surprises some people. In order to actually protect the building from being demolished, one tool would be to do a preservation historic easement, which protects the building, much like it protects land. Other requirements are that you have to have donative intent. So it can't be a quid pro quo type of situation where you're gaining some sort of ulterior benefit from doing the conservation easement. And it has to be perpetual, so it can never expire. Surface mining and mineral remoteness are interesting topics, especially within Colorado. So in order for the land to qualify, there has to be a negligible chance of surface mining. And what happens in some cases is that the mineral rights are not retained by the landowner. So again, so whoever has the mineral rights, if they could potentially come in and start mining for coal, who knows what's in there, that could be troublesome with an easement. So we work on that. As I mentioned before, mortgages have to be subordinated, so that the mortgage basically doesn't like that the conservation easement can't negate the mortgage if it goes into foreclosure or something. And you do also have to get a qualified appraisal that helps you understand the value before and after the easement. And I'll go into an example of that, as well as a baseline inventory that identifies the condition of the property at the time that the conservation easement is donated. And the baseline inventory is really cool. It's where biologists and other scientists will go out to the land and record all the things that make it wonderful, like the wildlife and all the attributes that are being protected with the easement. Okay, so now we're going to get into the meat of how these income tax credits are valued. Again, apologies if I'm repeating Martin at any point. He did a really awesome job of explaining this. But I'll go through my example here. So you're going to work with an appraiser to determine the value. This is not your regular residential appraiser that you work with to appraise your house, for instance. These folks specialize in these types of appraisals, and they're quite complex. And so the requirements are that the parcel has to be owned by the donor, the entire contiguous parcel. And if there are family members that own property that's contiguous with the land itself, that whole property has to be appraised. You can't just do like a tiny chunk of it. They have to examine any enhancement to nearby land that's owned by the donor or related persons. So again, if you're going to put a conservation easement on your property and your mom has the property next door and your easement is going to protect her beautiful view and raise her property value, that's something that they're going to look at. And it also has to be dated no earlier than 60 days prior to the date that you donate. As you know, land, or as you may know, land in Colorado is expensive and the real estate market is kind of crazy. So you wouldn't be able to, and you probably wouldn't want to do an appraisal now and then wait 2 years to do your donation, because the price of the land would have changed by then. And again, we're looking at that income tax return file date. So it can be up to October 15th of the previous year. I feel like this is a lot of information. So they look at comparable sales. And then they do a before and after valuation. So if you're wondering, like, where are these tax credits coming from and how are they calculated, this is going to give you sort of your answer. So let's say your land is worth $3 million without any conservation easement on it, just if you're to sell it on the open market. And that's been certified by an appraiser. And then that same appraiser will say, based on the terms of this conservation easement, we're going to extinguish or get rid of all of the development rights and protect this land. It's going to reduce the value, right? Because it can't be used in the same way by someone. So let's say that reduces the value of the land by $1 million. That would give you $1 million conservation easement value. So that's the value that you've given away by doing this process. So yeah, or the donation value. And so the tax credits are calculated based on that donation value. The formula is currently 90% of your donation value up to a maximum credit of $5 million. So we'll take that $1 million and look at 90% of that. So 90% of $1 million is $900,000 in tax credits. So that's how the state's calculating that. If you have a large donation, so the limit is $1.5 million in tax credits per year. So if you were to do, let's see. Yeah, okay, I'm going to go through this. So let's say you did a $4 million donation and you got $3.6 million in tax credits. You could only receive 1.5 million per year. So they issue it in kind of in a stream of credits. So you get them over time. So the first 1.5 million is 2023. The second 1.5 million is 2024. And that the remaining 600,000 would be for 2025. And there are some rules regarding the sale of tax credits. Even though we work to make it as seamless as possible, we really do strive and ensure that everything is buttoned up on the state level. So credits can be sold up to October 15th for use against the buyer's liability for the previous year. So like, for instance, this year, you would have until October 15th to purchase 2023 tax credits to use on your 2023 return. Oh, and I have an example here. Yeah. So, so that's something to keep in mind. And we're happy to work with you. You know, if you have specific questions about your situation or the timing, that's, you know, a lot of what we do. The landowner, the person that's selling the tax credits, they can sell all of them, or they can just sell some of them and keep the rest for their own tax bill. That definitely makes sense if you are, for instance, a landowner that pays taxes. But Southern Plains Land Trust, as we mentioned, is a nonprofit, so they're going to want to sell all these tax credits. And you know, why would someone purchase these tax credits? What are the benefits? And I realize I should have put in bold letters at the top, to support Southern Plains Land Trust would be the #1 reason why. So I amend my slide retroactively, but the other benefit to you is that you're going to be purchasing them at a certain discount, and the rate varies on the time of year. And we also work with SPLT to determine a rate that's going to be favorable to you know, their community and their organization. Again, you can apply them towards your taxes dollar for dollar. What we see now is that pricing for buyers varies from 89 to 94 cents depending on the time of year and the year of the credit. So, and again, I hope I'm not repeating myself, but you know, let's say you wanted to purchase tax credits for 2023 right now. As you can imagine, a lot of people are working on their tax forms right now, and you know, they can use them right away. So if you wanted to buy those 2023 tax credits, they're going to be more expensive. You'll get less of a discount just because there's a higher demand. On the flip side, if you're willing to hold on to those credits for a couple of years, and again, I'm speaking more to like our open marketplace versus specific SPLT buyers, we're typically seeing that we need to adjust our rates down just to account for the time value of money and people not being able to use them right away. But we'll just take a really simple example. Let's say you are buying $100,000 of tax credit to offset $100,000 of liability. You purchase it at 94%. So you buy something at 94, you buy the tax credits at 94,000. That's how much you pay to Southern Plains or whomever, and then you get that $100,000 tax credit. And you'd save $6,000. Why do we exist? Why do people work with brokers rather than negotiating these deals on their own? So we review everything: the appraisal, the deed of conservation, the title, the baseline, and we prepare all of the tax forms. As I mentioned at the beginning of my talk, you know, our team's been at this for nearly 2 decades. They go through everything with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that when it goes to the Department of Revenue and the Division of Conservation, they're not going to question it. We also help with the tax credit application process. So we'll work with the landowners to compile all those materials and send them off to the state. And we are here as consultants and guides. So we can answer any questions. We'll make sure that you're getting those certificates issued in your name. As Martin mentioned, you know, if you have a hiccup, an issue, something weird happens, we will jump on it and make sure that everything looks good for you. We do have an annual tax credit cap. Currently it's 45 million. I think I mentioned it may increase as soon as 2025, although we don't have final guidance and won't until the end of this legislative session. But we would love, I mean, it would be great for the conservation community if it were to increase. Per individual, the limit is $5 million per conservation easement. The certificates are first come, first serve. And that's another thing it's interesting and kind of cool about this is that there's no, you just submit it as soon as you're ready and you get the credits they're available. They're not scrutinizing, well, is one conservation easement quote unquote better than the other? There's no sort of preferential treatment. It's just first come, first serve. There is a wait list. It's a whole complicated mess, and we're working to remedy that with the state legislator this year as well. Some changes recently with the legislation is that we do have an organization called the Division of Conservation. So they review all these documents and again, make sure that they're meeting all of those lengthy requirements that I mentioned. They'll evaluate the appraisal and determine that it makes sense. And the Conservation Oversight Commission also evaluates to make sure that the conservation easement tax credit that you're getting is supporting a project that aligns with conservation values. And something that's really important is that because the Division of Conservation exists, that has created that's made it so that there's virtually no risk to buyers and very minimal risk to sellers. But once you've purchased that tax credit from Split, you're good. It can never be challenged. Okay, so recap. Extremely generous tools are available in Colorado for donors of conservation easements. You can receive state tax credits, which can be converted into cash. The individual cap is 5 million. Oh, and there's my name. Any questions, thoughts? I feel like that was maybe a lot of information, but wanted to highlight, the true legitimacy and scrutiny of this process, and that, you as an individual taxpayer will have a very simple kind of procedure, but there's a lot of thought and preparation that goes into making these deals happen. Yeah, any questions? I'll take you guys off full screen.
I thought that was incredibly comprehensive and thorough, Caroline. I really appreciate that. And I think that'll be really useful, especially when we post it on our website so people can kind of scroll through and, it's basically all the information you'd ever need to know about how tax credits work. And I think that will, I'm not surprised there are any questions because it was really, really helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, ironically, I took a lot out. So, maybe that is a signal to me that our standard presentation is far and beyond what anyone would need to know. But there's a lot of moving parts. We worry about them so that you don't have to. Maybe will be our new tagline. But yeah, are there any other questions? Concerns? No.
Sorry, I had one question. So the $5 million per conservation easement max, is that per conservation easement, or is that per group owning the easement, or is that per property owner? How is that kind of fenced in?
Yeah, so it's per conservation easement donation. So and what's interesting is that because land values have skyrocketed in Colorado, we're finding that, certain landowners actually exceed that 5 million limit based on their appraisal. So what's possible, and I believe Split has even done, is that you can phase your donations. So you do like the first year, do your donation easement, and then the second phase would be the following year. And so there's some nuance to it. It's not a situation that I would imagine a ton of people encounter, but we work with folks who do, and it's possible that if you are faced with, you get your appraisal back and you realize that your donation value would be far and above 5 million, there are ways to work the system and make sure that you get that full value and that you're not limited to just the 5 million. Cool.
Good
Awesome.
question, Lexi. Anyone else? Questions for Caroline before we wrap things up here?
Thank you, Donna. Well, as I mentioned, I probably won't have as much interaction with you guys, being an outside party. So I just want to plug again that I'm here if you have any questions at all whatsoever. No question is silly or anything like that. Just please let us know if we can help.
And if I don't think I mentioned it earlier, but Tax Credit Connection has been just incredibly helpful to Split. And that deal that Tax Credit Connection offers us, where if we bring buyers, we get 91 cents on the dollar versus 85 cents on the dollar, has resulted in tens of thousands more dollars in Split's pockets to be spent on land acquisition and our rewilding work. And so, Caroline, thank you very much. I mean, Tax Credit Connection has just been a wonderful partner. And then Martin mentioned he was part of the Colorado Open Lands Foundation board. But so we donate all of our conservation easements to Colorado Open Lands, and they have been a phenomenal partner as well. And so there's really a team involved, but it has resulted in multiple millions of dollars going towards our work to rewild the prairie. So thank you all.
And I probably more than anyone else as a new executive director have been the beneficiary of both Martin's help, but especially Tax Credit Connection. And I'm super thankful for your guys' collaboration, and Ariel and Caroline and the whole team. It's been amazing to work with you and really appreciate it. So.
Good. Well, we love you guys and, really support your mission. And I'll just say that, as Nicole mentioned, the best way for Split to maximize the impact that these tax credits have is to sell it to their network and bring buyers to the table. So, if you know someone or have a friend or a family member and they don't know about Split, but they're paying taxes anyways, we're really happy to work with anyone that pays Colorado taxes. Would make sense for them to make a purchase. So yeah.
Pass the message along to your friends and family, spread the word, let them know that it's a win-win for Split. And if you pay taxes, which I think applies to most people, I think it's definitely a win-win. So unless anyone has anything else to add, I think we'll wrap up. That was phenomenal. And we will be posting this recording probably on our website and probably disseminating it through a newsletter and variety of sources, just to make sure that the message is spread far and wide. So yeah, with that, I would just love to thank Martin and Caroline for attending and for providing all this really helpful information. We're super thankful for both of you guys, and thanks to everyone else for coming. And hopefully, you'll be doing some tax credits with Split and Tax Credit Connection this year. So thanks again, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.